Hey everybody, welcome to CAF Warbird Tube, the show where we talk about World War II, aviation, history, and so much more. Warbird Tube is produced by the Commemorative Air Force, the world's largest flying museum. Our mission is to educate, inspire, and honor through flight and living history experiences. The CAF began the Warbird movement more than 65 years ago, and thanks to the support of individuals like you, we continue to grow strong. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and now our host, Steve Buss. Thanks for watching and keep 'em flying.
Good evening and welcome to CAF Warbird Tube. This is episode number 122, and tonight we get an update on EAA AirVenture Oshkosh. If you've ever been here, you know it's one of the most anticipated events that happens in the aviation calendar. And if you haven't been here, what are you waiting for? Come on. Rick Larsen is going to join us in just a moment. He's going to give us some information on all the things that are going on this year at Whitman Regional Airport. But before we get started, please do us a favor. If you haven't already done so, please take a second to like, share, or subscribe and follow us. And if you do subscribe on YouTube, click that bell icon and you'll get notifications about new episodes as they go live. Now, as you're watching tonight, you might have a question or two. Please feel free to type that in the chat box, and I'll try to answer them with Rick, either during the presentation or for sure before we sign off. And joining me right now is Rick Larsen from Experimental Aircraft Association, otherwise known as EAA, the home of AirVenture. And Rick, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks a lot, Steve.
All right, well, one of the things that you take care of is features and attractions as far as the show goes, and that's a pretty tall order, but let's take a look at, I guess, some stats from the shows in the past.
Yeah, sure. And I think, as you mentioned, I'm sure a lot of the folks listening tonight and watching this, have been to Oshkosh before, been to the show before. But for those that haven't, when you step back and you look at over a 70-year span, and when you look at 70 events and conventions, many of which 50 plus have been here in Oshkosh, it really is a unique experience, as you said, and this goes back to 53, in the first fly-in that happened at Timmerman. And, that first fly-in, we think, at least the way the records show, there are about 150 people. And when you look at where we are today, it's hard to imagine, one event, actually growing and mostly in organic fashion to get to where it is. If you've not been here before, it is this combination of a fly-in, an expo, basically a big family reunion, and, on top of that is obviously what we do from an overall air show standpoint. But, when you look at the basic numbers, you're talking about 10,000 airplanes, in one fashion or another that come into the area. A campground that at any point in time has 40,000 people living in it, that almost doubles the size of Oshkosh, when you look at it at any point in time. 2,500 show planes, 800 exhibitors. We've got a ton of media that show up for this, hundreds of forums, and then, about 9, basically we're running 9 air shows, 7 daytime air shows, 2 nighttime air shows. And at the end of the day, all this happens, because of 5,000 plus volunteers, that show up and really make this what it is.
Well, and I've always said that even if something happened and all of the EAA staff were removed from the Earth, aliens came down and took y'all, all the volunteers would show up, the show would go on.
It would.
Because, and it's right, it's the volunteers that really make this not only happen, but also such a unique event.
Yeah, it does. I think when we think about the volunteer side, if you ever sat down and you said, well, let's not do volunteers, we'll go do paid staff.
Yeah.
It would never be the same event. The volunteers really make this what it is, because of the commitment to the event, to the organization, to the cause, and it's how it's delivered, and it's really delivered by the volunteers.
Very, very true. Well, and now there is a core team that I know you'd like to recognize that's kind of put together all the features and attractions, and this is a pretty good group of talented individuals.
Yeah, it really is. As this winds up being essentially a year-round planning activity for the organization. It does start with folks like Jack at the top in terms of being involved directly and where we're headed each year. Sean Elliott on the operations side. We brought some new people in, which we'll talk about in a minute, and Tim and Boyd and Jim Tucherone, Dick Anusa, General Miller, who really helps us on the military side, Chris. It really is a team effort. It doesn't happen without a broad number of people here at EAA being involved in what we do, pulling the features and attractions together.
Yeah, it really is. And like you said, it is something that happens year round. And in fact, your planning cycle it used to be the show would end on the weekend, and on Monday you'd start planning, but actually the planning is starting even earlier now to plan, ahead for the next year.
Yeah, I mean, we look at the way we look at this is, the event will end and we'll get together, mid-August, both to debrief, the current year's event, what worked, what didn't work, what could we have done better, what kind of opportunities are there out there. But we really start to lay the framework out then for, what are the opportunities, what are the themes, what are the things that we can go focus on in the following year. And again, that starts in August and it just builds from there. We involve all of our special interest communities, and we'll throw a lot of ideas on the wall. They don't all stick, but that's how we get to the ultimate group that we wind up starting to work through from an execution standpoint. And at some point, some of those may fall away, but during the year, some others will be added. I think the cool thing is, I look back on those planning meetings that we do in August, and about 80 to 90% of the things that we were kind of zeroing in on, wind up being, executed at the next year's event. So it's pretty cool to see that and, play a role in really bringing that forward.
Well, you did mention Tim Fitzgerald and Boyd Martin. They're taking over the new air operations team. We're looking forward to working with them.
Yep, we had some changes last year with Dennis Dunbar, headed down to Sun and Fun, and we wound up bringing Boyd and Tim on board. It was really important to us and important to the organization as a whole that we brought folks in that understood EAA, understood AirVenture, and had been involved in the past. I mean, this wasn't something that we would bring somebody cold into. I mean, it just would not work. And so, both of these guys are retired controllers. They have, air boss history with us, at Oshkosh, and just a very strong connection to what we do. We use an advisory team made up of a lot of folks in the industry. At the end of the day, this is where we wound up, and we're in great shape this year.
That's good. And talk a little bit about that advisory team. Is that a relatively new group that's kind of come together as a resource?
We actually, this goes back probably 8 or 9 years. It was something that Dennis actually spearheaded. And, it was important to us, I think, to make sure that when it came to, the folks that were performing here, and those that would want to perform here, that we had a really solid vetting process. Oshkosh is a different animal, as you know, when you look at just the size of it, and what it really means, and you have to be ready to be part of this. And that team has really helped us on the performer side. It really helps us, in terms of how do we maintain the culture that is part of this organization and is part of the air show operation side for the event. And just has been incredibly helpful, I think, as we move forward, and especially over the last 12 months. I mean, what we didn't want to do is make the wrong move in terms of where we went from an operations standpoint, and they certainly helped us, with moving forward in a direction that we could be really confident about.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned General Miller in as part of the advisory team, and he's really he's been a great asset as well. He's a retired Air Force general and one of the sweetest people you'll ever meet. He's so much fun to work with. I enjoy working with him every year. But we've got a lot of Air Force presence coming to the show this year.
Yeah, we certainly do, and you're absolutely right as far as General Miller's concerned. I mean, just a huge asset for us. Really helps us on the military side all the way around. As most everybody's aware, over the last several years, we focused on a different major command of the Air Force. This year, it's AETC, the Training Command, and they are all in this year. You're going to see a very comprehensive presence, both in terms of the air show itself, what's on static, and their presence here in terms of being able to educate the public and our members in terms of what they do, and in turn I think we can certainly be a source for them from a recruiting standpoint. So it's going to be a great presence. Obviously they can bring almost all the different assets of the Air Force to the table, which they have. We'll hit a slide here in a little bit, when you go look at what we have in place from a current military standpoint. But, they are bringing everything from an honor guard to a band to, a C-17 hospital, military working dogs are recruiting, et cetera. And then with that, we're integrating the Wisconsin Air National Guard in this in a much stronger way, we think, this year as well. So that is clearly one of the themes this year is what we're doing with Training Command.
Excellent. Well, one of the other big themes, of course, is we alluded to a moment ago, is the 70th anniversary of EAA itself, founded in January of 1953.
Yep, you're going to see the 70th just kind of woven through everything that we're doing at AirVenture this year. It is a big anniversary. Again, you'll see it in the air show. You'll see it at Theater in the Woods. You'll see it throughout the grounds. And really highlighting, the things that the organization has accomplished over the years. Certainly the things that have gone on at convention here. But it winds up being, just that kind of overarching theme for us this year.
Yeah, it is amazing when you look back at 70 years. If you just look at the home building community between 1953, when Paul Poberezny founded the organization with a small group of enthusiasts in Milwaukee, and what they were doing with aircraft at that time was just sort of modifying the airplanes that were already being manufactured, and then to look forward, 70 years to what like the RV series, Dick Van Brunsven and has done, and really the explosion of people being able to build their own airplanes and fly their own airplanes, not to mention things like ultralights, and we'll get to these kind of high tech kind of space age things that are coming to the show as well. A little bit further on, but I'm looking forward to that, especially the Theater in the Woods program on Monday night.
Yep, absolutely. So another one of the anchors this year is it's the 50th anniversary of the end of hostilities in Vietnam, and as this audience well knows, I mean, we've got a large group of Vietnam era airplanes out there that normally show up at Oshkosh. We've certainly asked and invited a number of others. And then at the same time, we've still got, aircraft operating currently in the military that are Vietnam, have a history or Vietnam era type airplanes. So one of the opportunities that we saw with this is for the last several years, the honor flight that we do on Friday has been Vietnam focused. They've been yellow ribbon honor flights with American Airlines. And we've got an opportunity this year to really fill the plaza on Friday with Vietnam era aircraft and make that part of that welcome home ceremony that occurs. And we think it'll be really special as a result of that. In addition, this will be integrated in what we do at Theater in the Woods and programming there as well. But You look at, the airplanes that at this point we're anticipating being here that have, the Vietnam era pedigree. It winds up being a significant number of airplanes, and we think this will be a special evening, when the honor flight returns on Friday.
Yes, it's always emotional, and I think this year is even more so. And
Absolutely.
backing up just a few years before Vietnam, the big Corsair reunion, and this is if anyone is a Corsair fan, you can't miss this.
Now, this goes back to, really this whole part of this starts with our own Corsair that we have in the museum that, wasn't up until 2 years ago. We discovered that the real history of that airplane was really Korea. And it had a direct linkage to the story Devotion, and that it was one of the replacement airplanes for Tom Hudner's plane and Jesse Brown's aircraft. And so all the folks that were part of VF-32, at that point in time, their names are in that logbook for our airplane. So when we put it back into, the colors and the scheme that it wore, in Korea, it really gave us this opportunity to focus on the story Devotion, and this year we'll be showing it at Flying Movie Theater, but also it gave us this opportunity to say, let's go out and do a reunion of Corsairs. We also, I think, a lot of folks saw, it was a couple weeks ago, we pulled our Corsair out of the museum and ran it for the first time in 25 years. And that will be a significant part of what we're doing with the 13 Corsairs that are going to be here, and that it will lead a run-up of all the Corsairs with then a number of the Corsairs flying. We've got, current VF-32 bringing a Super Hornet. So during the week, you're going to see the Super Hornet and our Corsair nose to nose on the plaza. I think this is going to be a really, really memorable part of what, Oshkosh 23 is really all about.
Yeah.
So another area that we're really focused on this year is space, and we're not that far away from heading back to the moon with the Artemis program. At the same time, we've still got folks directly involved in the Apollo program. So one of the things that we really went after this year was putting together a pretty compelling Theater in the Woods evening. This will be on Monday night, and it really will be a panel of Artemis folks and Apollo folks in similar roles, talking about what we're doing today and how we're going about it and how we did it 50 plus years ago. And I think it's going to be a really, really memorable evening. Charlie Duke is heading that up on the Apollo side, the Apollo 16 LEM pilot. And I think it's just going to be a spectacular evening. But we've got NASA, here in a bigger way this year. They're bringing the Super Guppy. It'll be open, for the most part of the time that it's on the plaza. In the Guppy will be a test article, an Orion capsule. We've really wanted that at Oshkosh now for the last couple years. You'll be able to, go up to a viewing stand, look into the Guppy, and the Orion capsule will be brought forward, in the cargo bay. So it'll be a way to not only see the Guppy, but also get a glimpse of, the Orion capsule, which is key to the Artemis program. So go ahead.
The public benefit flying has been something it's sort of been an underlying theme the last couple of years, but taking a little more spotlight this year, I think.
Yeah, it does. This is one of these things we've talked about a lot over the years is, how do we use Oshkosh and how do we use AirVenture to put a spotlight on a segment of aviation that kind of goes unseen to a lot of the general public. And it's not till you start to explain a lot of what goes on that it starts to resonate with folks in terms of, oh, you know, that's part of general aviation, or it's part of aviation as a whole. So this year on Saturday, we're going to focus on public benefit flying. There'll be a wide variety of airplanes out on the plaza that really represents everything from, you know, Air Care Alliance type flying to, you know, some of the military flying that is, you know, very much around, you know, public benefit, and a whole lot of other aircraft. You know, we've been partnering with Air Care Alliance to put a spotlight on this. We're going to do some awards prior to the afternoon air show, and I think this gives us an opportunity to go focus on a part of aviation that just gets overlooked, and frankly something I'd love to see us do every year. And you know, it is broad enough and big enough that each year you could pick a segment out and put a pretty, you know, broad spotlight on it. So I think it's overdue, and I think it'll be a very welcome thing for us to go do.
One of the new things that's new, six years old now, but the Twilight Flight Fest is really, for many years, the ultralight area was placed to be after the main air show was over, because you know, winds calm down and ultralights can go out and fly. But this Twilight Flight Fest has really evolved into something beyond just watching some airplanes fly. I mean, it's some pretty awesome activities.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to see what's happened with it. You know, the idea, frankly, started with discussions around, well, we end most of our flying at 8 o'clock, and clearly folks at AirVenture, you know, there's a pretty big group that hasn't got enough. I mean, you know, they've gotten their 15 hours of flying in, but you know, how do we extend that? And that was kind of how the conversation started with this one. And it really evolved into, how do we put a spotlight on some other segments of flying, other segments of aviation, some that might be a little bit more attainable for folks in terms of ultimately being able to participate. And the cool part about this is this happens on every evening when we're not doing a normal night air show. And so what this has evolved into when you go down there is it's a much different audience. It's got a different vibe to it. It's younger. It's more, you know, families and younger families. And it's just folks that are just, you know, having a good time, you know, in more of an up close way of watching aviation. You know, we moved what we had started with doing some of the STOL, you know, demos, and brought that down here to the ultralight strip. It is, you know, obviously jumpers that are involved in this. We've got the Arrhythmia paramotor team, a balloon glow. But probably the thing that, you know, gets a ton of attention is the 3D RC stuff that we do after dark, with some of the top, you know, 3D RC pilots that are around, and most of them are young, and really represent a, you know, another breed of you know, aviation participation. I mean, this year one of the folks that is involved with that and is heading it up is RJ Gritter. Well, RJ's in our air show flying a decathlon, but he started with this, and he started, you know, as one of the top flyers from a 3D RC standpoint. And it's just a neat story, and that's really what this whole thing is all about. So, yeah, I look forward to another great year down there, and it is just, it's fun. It's a great way to go end the evening.
It certainly is. Got a few other highlights for folks here.
Yeah, we talked about the honor flight. You know, again, I mean, you said it, Steve. When you go look at the honor flight, you know, a very emotional part of what we do. And you know, I think we're on, this is probably year 12 or 13 of doing, you know, an honor flight out of here, and it has evolved. You know, the first one or two that we did were, you know, World War II, and then it went to Korea. And has now moved to Vietnam when it comes to the veterans. But it is absolutely one of those things that if you're here You want to be on the plaza at 6 o'clock or 6:30 on Friday when the air show ends and the honor flight, comes in, because this is everybody's opportunity to say thank you. And you're saying thank you to a group of folks that never got that 50 years ago. And they appreciate that in just an incredible way. So it winds up being just a fantastic thing to be part of. Other things I've got in here, I had Kid Venture down here. If you don't know, the Kid Venture piece, we'll put, 15 or 20,000 kids through that programming over the week. And it's just a really neat way to get kids exposed, especially younger kids exposed to aviation. On our four corners, which is right at the center of the show, a couple of things to highlight. For the last 2 or 3 years now, we've done a Learn to Fly Center. So we've got a place to go aim people that have come to the event, have always thought about it, haven't taken that first step. This is a place to go talk to CFIs, to go sit in a sim, to get some questions answered that might make it easier for them to take that first step. And then this year, for the first time, we're doing a youth welcome center. As you know, I mean, there is a wide variety of things on site for kids and families to do, but the event is so large that if you've not been here before, it's really hard to, comprehend what is all here or understand what's here. This is our opportunity to package that up in a way that if you stop there, we can get you directed with your family to the areas on site that might be most relevant and most interesting. So we're looking forward to this one. I think this is a good ad. I think it's overdue as well. And I think it'll work well this year.
Wonderful. Always aircraft gatherings and anniversaries, and this year is no different. Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of them this year, Steve. Yeah. When you look at just sheer numbers, the Cessna 170 group that is coming to Vintage, they are either at or over 100 airplanes that are registered right now. So, you've got that extreme when you look at numbers. Others may not be quite as big, but nonetheless represent, significant anniversaries, albeit on the Vintage side or on the home build side, and a number of ultralight anniversaries as well. So these are always cool. It creates a reason to come here, but it's also neat when you're walking around the site to just see these pockets of like aircraft that are here, as part of a celebration.
Yeah, and especially for folks who are relatively new to maybe the home building community, things like the Hyperbike or the Midget Mustang, even Sonics, their 25th anniversary. These are aircraft that were leading cutting edge 20, 50 years ago, whatever, but they're still an important part of especially the home build community. So it's an opportunity to honor the past and maybe learn a little bit from where we've been.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think, this is our opportunity to go do that. So you've got the current military slide up. And again, I mentioned we've got, pretty strong participation of the military this year. And I think that was, probably an understatement when we got, involved this year with the folks at AETC and General Robinson, which stepped up and just said, hey, we really want to be part of this in a strong way. And, what do you guys want? What do we want to try to accomplish this year? And so, and obviously it's not just the Air Force, it's all branches. And you can see, here's a list of those that we anticipate being on the ground, either as static or flying in the show. Inside of this list are things like a U-2 that'll be here a couple times. Not on the ground, but flying in and doing a profile routine and then flying out on a couple different days. You've got the B-52 there. One of the other things that, I think will be pretty cool this year is we've got a commitment on the F-35 side to have an A, B, and a C. So it'll be the first time, at least that we're aware, that we've got all three, at least at a civilian show, together. And I think that'll be pretty cool to see, representing, the Marines and the Navy and the Air Force. But, wide variety of current generation airplanes. And, just a ton of cooperation this year from the military.
Yeah, and one of the things that's sort of increased in the last few years is the number of higher ranking generals that, depending on what command they're with, have been showing up for the event, and I think they're really understanding that this is more than just a civilian air show. It is an event unto itself, and they too want to be a part of it.
Yeah, I think we were talking about it today in one of our planning meetings. I think we had 5 or 6 generals that will be here, and taking an active part in what we're doing, and it really is representative of the audience that is here, the opportunity to tell a story, and to get people to understand the mission and what it's all about. And I think being able to support that, being able to support it from a recruiting standpoint is a big deal. And I think a lot of times it's just the exposure side that can go create those opportunities.
Absolutely. This next slide is probably going to interest a few of our viewers. We've got some pretty cool Warbirds that are going to make their debut here during the show.
Yeah, I think most folks are aware of Rod Lewis's C-121 Constellation that flew for the first time last week, I believe, losing track of weeks. But just an incredible restoration. I think having this here will be, just fantastic. We plan on having it on the plaza from Monday through Friday, and I think that will get a ton of eyeballs on it. We got a new P-47 restoration, which I think will be, another just incredible airplane for folks to see. Kermit Weeks is bringing his A-26, another new restoration. We've got the P-51C Thunderbird, which has just a really, really unique story, both from a military standpoint, but also from an air racing standpoint. An aircraft that was formerly, I think, owned by Jimmy Stewart, and has a pretty long pedigree to it. So I think the restoration side, always is of interest to folks, and that's the cool part about Oshkosh. Is every year there's something new here, and for a lot of the airplanes, this winds up being that first show, that they make. So again, as you look at this list, I'd mentioned the U-2. I mentioned the Guppy, but sitting alongside the Guppy this year will be the Boeing Dreamlifter. So, you talk about, 2 very unique airplanes with a common purpose. I think it'll be cool to see the 2 of them, side by side. You certainly won't miss them when you show up on the plaza. We've got the L4 from a Warbird standpoint, Rosie the Rocketer. Again, an amazing history to that airplane. MiG-29 will be here again this year, and flying. So it'll be here on static, but also flying. Delta's bringing an A350. We've got Doc. We've got, we'll talk about some of the more innovative airplanes, but Wisk has got their Cora. It's their 5th generation aircraft. It'll be flying autonomously here at the show, and putting on a demo on 1836. Doug is bringing Mr. Mulligan. We've got C-123 here. So that's going to be, this is, whenever I put this list together, it's like, okay, so I'm only leaving, a few hundred other airplanes off the list. So, there's something here for everybody, when it comes to just those airplanes you take a look at and you go, man, I'm glad I was here that year to see whatever.
Yeah. So Bill Foraker, who works in Air Ops, he's dropped in a little tidbit here for us. Now, again, this could be just rumor, and I don't know. Sweet old Bill is telling us this, but anyway. So he said he's talked to the MiG-21 guys, and it looks like they'll be arriving Thursday and departing Sunday. So there's a possibility, if everything goes right, all the stars align, you'll have a MiG-17, a 21, a 23, and a 29 all at Oshkosh. Where else are you going to see that?
Now, and he's absolutely right. I mean, that's what we're looking at this point. Maybe not all 100% confirmed, but that's what it's looking like. And again, what Bill's pointing out is what I always, when I would come up here before I was on the staff at EAA, there was always something that you would walk away from Oshkosh with that would always be that, man, I'm glad I was here this year because, I saw this or I heard this or I met so-and-so. That's what it's all about. And again, nowhere else are you going to get that collection of aircraft and people.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And you mentioned the Whisk a moment ago, but again, these are some pretty futuristic aircraft that not only are just concepts, because we've seen a lot of concepts through the years.
Yeah.
These are actually going to fly is part of the show.
Yep, we've got the as I mentioned, the Whisk Core. That's a yellow aircraft there.
Mm-hmm.
And they were actually out here flying this past week. Getting the flights in that they needed to get in to get stuff set up. And again, that's going to be an autonomous demo. And that'll fly multiple times during the week. Same thing with Black Fly. Pipistrel's got their Bayless. And then we've got Gravity here. And I wouldn't call it an aircraft.
Right.
But it is really cool, the show that they put on. They'll be flying virtually every day at the start of the air show. And they're UK based. Their technology has gotten to be very proven in terms of what they're doing. Not only have they put a lot of demos on at a lot of different events, but also they have a lot of interest from militaries around the country or around the world. It's just a really cool deal. I mean, it is a very futuristic quote unquote jetpack type of flying, and I think people just get a real kick out of seeing it.
I think so too.
I did this is just a list of some of the unique flight demos that'll take place during the air show. I'd mentioned the U2, the profile side. We've also got ATC doing a demo with C-17 and KC-135. ATC overall on Saturday and Sunday, there'll be a number of aircraft flying, heritage and legacy flights. We do have the F-22 demo team here, A-10s. We've got the National Guard doing a simulated airport assault with a variety of helicopters on Friday. I think that's going to really be cool to see. And again, we wanted to try to up our game with the National Guard. They do a lot for us during the event in terms of providing support. And, the event is our opportunity to go put visibility on different things. So that's that part of it. We talked about the Corsairs, the Polaris group that's part of the MiG-29 piece will be flying, and I mentioned Whisk and Gravity, and a number of others. But these are some of those more unique flight demos that you'll see inside the air show itself.
Yeah. Along with some of the world's greatest aerobatic performers, air show performers that you'll see anywhere. But but as you mentioned earlier with the Twilight Flight Fest, just because the flying stops during the day, the sun goes down, but that doesn't mean the activities stop.
No, and as you know, Steve, I mean, you were involved in this for a long time. I mean, Theater in the Woods goes back a whole lot of years here. It was really that initial evening venue that, pulled a lot of people together. It's sort of that ultimate forum, type of presentation that occurs. But it gives us a way to go spotlight, some really cool stories and cool people. And you think about what we've done over the years, I just think about what we've done a couple times with the Apollo astronauts and, Burt Rutan and so on. They become very memorable. And when you're sitting there in the evening with, 5 or 10,000 people that are sharing the same passion for what they're listening to, it's a pretty cool vibe that happens at Theater in the Woods. And, if you're in the campground, especially if you're new to the event and you plan on camping, this is Theater in the Woods is right adjacent to the campground itself. And certainly in the, the earlier days, I mean, that's the audience that really, came to Theater in the Woods, and it still is a big, huge part of it. This year, we start with evening with champions, Paul Auger, Kent Jackson, and Denny Flanagan. On Monday, we're going to do EA 70th, and that will go into the NASA Artemis Apollo presentation. And again, it's kind of headlined by Charlie Duke, but we've got a group of Apollo folks and Artemis folks. We'll have one of the new Artemis astronauts, being part of this. And I think, given that we have put 50 plus years between these two efforts, and that's sometimes, I think for a lot of us, it's hard to believe that it's been that. But I think that's going to be just a cool evening to talk about, here's how we were doing it, primarily with slide rules and, what have you. And here's how we're doing it today. We're going to do a segment on Tuesday, Flying for Hollywood. We'll have the Hintons and the LaRosas. And I think that's going to be a really cool evening, when we just, talking about, what has happened over the years and some of the current, productions that have occurred. Women Venture Wednesday is our Women Venture Day. And we always have a panel at Theater in the Woods. This year it celebrates, the 30th anniversary of Women in Combat. And we've just got a great lineup there, for Wednesday night. When you get to Thursday, mentioned devotion. What we want to do at Theater in the Woods this year, as it relates to devotion, is rather than focus on the movie, is to really focus on the story itself. And we're going to do that with members of the Jesse Brown and Tom Hudner families, and then some Korean War veterans that actually had some direct interaction here. So it gives us the opportunity, and that's the cool part about Theater in the Woods, is it gives you that opportunity to hear this directly, from folks that were very close to this. And I think it's such an amazing story to begin with, that I think it'll be special to hear it at Theater in the Woods. Friday is going to be Vietnam, and we've got a great panel, laid out for that. That'll be followed by the Air Force Training Command and General Robinson and others, really talking about the mission of Training Command. And then we'll end it on Saturday with air racing, and just a great lineup there to really talk about air racing. And especially, before we got on, we were talking about Reno a little bit. I think this is an opportunity to go reflect on Reno as well. So we're looking forward to the Theater in the Woods this year. Flying movie theater is just hugely popular. We added Saturday. We actually added Saturday about 4 years ago, and then we had a monsoon, and then we had a pandemic. And we finally were able to go execute Saturday, and we started it with Top Gun, and we thought, okay, it's Saturday before the event. If we had 500 people show up, that would be pretty cool. And when we had 3,000 or 4,000 people show up, it was really cool. We're going to, we kick it off with Top Gun, followed by Top Gun Maverick. We're doing those back-to-back Saturday and Sunday. There's an old air racing movie, Tailspin, that'll show on Monday. Great Waldo Pepper on Tuesday. Amelie on Wednesday. Fly the Intruder as we look at Vietnam on Thursday. Devotion on Friday. That'll be a big, big night. And then we'll end it with Magnificent Men and Their Flying Machines. And it is really a cool evening, when you look at what goes on there.
And make sure you get some popcorn.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Warbirds in Review, just a this has become, just a really fundamental part of the event. And, you go look at, the lineup that is there this year and the different airplanes and folks that will be talking about them. And it really is cool. I mean, every day you've got two of these that goes on, and, it gives folks that are here the opportunity, especially with, a number of new restorations that we're talking about, to really hear firsthand, from the folks that are involved in, both in either the flying, the restoration side, or simply the history, of the aircraft. And again, it's just a big part of what, this event is really all about. And something I think that, again, I think people walk away with just a different understanding of an aircraft type, but more importantly, the people behind it. Whether it's, the L4 and the SNJ on Monday, we've got the F-18 and, P-51s on Tuesday, Thunderbird on Wednesday, along with the P-47, Corsair on Thursday, along with the L-19 and T-28s, MiG-17 and A-4, along with some helicopters on Friday, and then Saturday the B-25 and the P-51C, the red tail airplane, which clearly gives us an opportunity to talk about Tuskegee and what that is really all about. So it's going to be a cool, another cool Warbirds in Review lineup.
It certainly is, and some well-known names that are on there, like Bud Anderson, who's been a regular at Oshkosh for as long as I can remember. A couple of new names on there that I just want to point out for some of those of you who have been to the Wings Over Dallas show. Colonel Joe McPhail. I've had the pleasure of interviewing him a couple of times, and I like it. He calls himself a generic ace because he shot down 3 Japanese airplanes and crashed 2 American airplanes. So he's such a Lucky Luckadoo, another great friend of CAF, and of course the Tuskegee Airmen, Lieutenant Colonel George Hardy and James Harvey. They've been at AirVenture for several years, and they keep coming back. They love it. You can't get enough of them because you just talk to them, and they're such nice gentlemen, down to earth, and amazing. Most important, they spend time with the Rise Above exhibit, and they really talk to young people and try to inspire them every chance they get. So it's Warbirds in Review is just wonderful all the way around.
It really is, and again, I mean, we've mentioned a number of times with this, but so much of what makes Oshkosh unique, it's the people, and then Paul always said, it's the airplanes that might get you there the first time around. It's the people that bring you back. And yes, it's the family reunion aspect, but it's also being able to hear history firsthand.
Right.
And this is a huge part of it. But that opportunity, is threaded throughout, the event, and it just is a, significantly important part of what this is really all about.
Yeah, indeed.
So without going through, kind of the day-by-day schedule on the air show side, I just laid out a slide with, here's some of the cool things you might not want to miss from an air show standpoint. I mentioned the C-121. Right now it's scheduled to arrive during the show on Monday, depart on Friday during the show. Vietnam aircraft in the Friday air show, and they will certainly be flying on some of the other days as well. The innovative aircraft on Tuesday. Bernie Vasquez flying the P-47. I think that'll get a ton of eyeballs. We mentioned the Corsair run-up as part of the air show on Thursday. And that run-up will start with and be led by, the EAA Corsair, which is pretty cool to see. Right now, the plan is to have some of the family members of the devotion story really signal that startup of our Corsair, and then that will, cause the rest of those to start and run up. The U-2 profile flights, the Polaris MiG-29, Obviously, the demo, the demos and then the heritage flights and legacy flights are just always, I think just, amazing parts of any air show, and clearly with what we do here at Oshkosh. So, those are just some highlights.
Yeah, I got to put in a plug for Airbase Georgia, CAF's Airbase Georgia. They're Corsair.
Yep.
Everything they're planning to be there. So again, with old airplanes, sometimes what you plan is not what always happens. But we're looking forward to seeing the Corsair, which was also in the movie Devotion as well. It was one of the
Yes.
Corsairs that was in the production. So.
Yep. In terms of just overall, and again, this list is a relatively short list compared to all that is here. But especially if you're well, actually, whether you're here every year, you're new to AirVenture and what goes on here in Oshkosh. There's some things that happen that sometimes aren't necessarily high visibility things, but are just cool. And then there's other things that are going to be very highly visible. I mean, this list, we talked about Twilight Flight Fest. You're looking for something to do on an evening when we're not having a night show. So all the nights other than Wednesday and Saturday, Twilight Flight Fest. Again, it grows every year. Getting out to the plaza early in the week and seeing the Guppy and the Dreamlifter sitting side by side, I think will be very cool. Saturday and Sunday at Flying Movie Theater. It's just in some ways you kind of look at it and you have to kind of chuckle, and that the 4,000 people or whatever that showed up on Saturday to see Top Gun, probably 90% of them knew every line in the movie. Yet they're there, and it's just a cool way to kick things off. MiG-29, obviously the Connie. If you're looking for a place to have breakfast, you're in the campground, just going to the chapter pavilion and once or twice during the week, and it's a great way to go just kick the morning off. Corsair, as we talked about, the Learn to Fly Center, just another cool venue along with the Youth Center. The night air shows, we talked about the new restorations that are out there from a Warbird standpoint. The seaplane base, we don't talk about it enough, but just an incredibly cool place to go. And when you're there, you sometimes have a hard time imagining where you just came from. If you came off, the main site, and then here you are in this pretty tranquil setting, with 100, seaplanes out there, and it's just an amazing way to go spend the day. Women Adventure photo opportunity at 11 a.m. on the plaza on Wednesday. We talked about Theater in the Woods, talked about Honor Flight. Out on the plaza every day, we're doing plane-side interviews. And it's just another opportunity to hear things firsthand. So, if you're on the plaza, definitely look for that happening.
Yeah, it's amazing. Is Jerry Burke hosting those again this year?
Jerry, this will be the first year that Jerry is not.
Okay.
And so Ryan Dombrowski is doing that this year, and they worked together last year. Yep. So I think we had a little bit of a transition, and but obviously it was Jerry that really got all that going.
Yes, he did. Tickets are now available. You can, if you haven't bought your tickets yet, what are you waiting for? You can get those online. And let's see. We don't have the web. Oh, there it is, the website, airventure.org. You can do that in advance. And there's a streamlined way of picking up your tickets and kind of moving your way through the admission gates now.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of years ago, we started, and this came out of COVID, doing an express arrival where, we'll mail your wristbands ahead of time, and you'll have everything when you get here. I think we may have already crossed the date for that to happen for this year for folks, but still just getting your tickets in advance. It's a really quick, through the line to go get your wristbands then, and you're simply redeeming what you purchased online for wristbands, and you're in. All
right. If people are thinking about flying in, there's a whole NOTAM booklet. It's yep. We're 30 some pages long. if someone is thinking about flying in, they've not done it before, how can they get a hold of the NOTAM and maybe just some things to think about before you arrive?
Yeah, you can. It is there on our on the AirVenture website,
Okay.
and obviously, if you're flying in and you haven't done it before, definitely spending the time to really go through the NOTAM is critical. To be able to get as many airplanes in here, it is a lot of non-standard procedures that we have in place, but they work. It allows us to bring a lot of airplanes in and get the site filled up in relatively short order.
Yeah, and I guess any words of advice I would have is make sure you study that NOTAM and be prepared, as you said, for some non-standard approaches. I mean, there will be times when there are 2 or 3 airplanes landing on a runway at the same time. Now, there's separation, but it's not what you're used to in normal landing configuration. And same for departing. Yeah, it's a little different than it is at a quote unquote normal airport. So you just kind of have to go with the flow. And just be ready. Right?
Absolutely. I think one of the things that I think it's important to let everybody know is, over the last year was the first year where we never got into a position where we had to turn anybody away.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a result of us adding more and more aircraft, general aircraft parking and general aircraft camping spaces. And we bring another 30 acres on this year.
Wow.
That is new. And we want folks to understand that, regardless of when you arrive, you will find a spot here.
Good.
And, I think it's important, from an operational standpoint to understand that, make good decisions when it comes to weather, and that you're not necessarily trying to beat somebody here to get that last space in Oshkosh. And so I think it was important last year that we got to that point. We came very close, putting airplanes in that last row, but nonetheless, we were able to accommodate. And this year, with the additional 30 acres, we should be in really good shape.
Good. And again, an important point to make, if you've not been here before to the show, it's if you don't have a Warbird, if you don't have a vintage aircraft or a home built, whatever, there's general aviation parking all over the airport, and everyone's welcome. Come on in. It's aviation's great family reunion. So so there's still time to plan your trip if you haven't done so. Although I'm pretty sure a lot of the folks listening tonight if they're coming, they've already got their plans in mind. So let's see, one question we do have here, with all the F-35s coming, will we see an F-35 hover demo this year? And that might be something that's going to be discussed in air operations as we get closer to the event. I don't know. Have you heard anything, Rick?
Yeah, I mean, we'd love to. I think, our understanding at this point is you probably won't see that this year, but it certainly doesn't mean that you won't see that in the future.
Okay, good. Any final thoughts before we wrap up tonight?
No, just, appreciate the opportunity. And again, I think, when we look at Oshkosh, whether you're coming here for the, 30th time or this is your first, it really is a family reunion. And it is the folks, the people that are here, that really make the event what it is. And it is an event unlike anything else. And, again, I think, we plan every year trying to make Oshkosh something that people walk away from going, man, I'm glad I was here this year because of. And I think, we're in really good shape for that this year. So if you're thinking about it, you haven't been here before, but you've got an interest at all in aviation and flight, it is just a tremendous event and one that we'd love to see you here.
Good. One quick last question. Any P-38s confirmed or talking about coming to the show this year?
I don't have the current Warbird list in terms of what has, pre-registered. Almost every year there is. I can't say that one for sure at this point.
Okay. Well, we'll keep an eye out for it, and if we do find out that there's any, we'll post that in the comment section when the video goes up to YouTube.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Again, don't forget to click that like, subscribe, or follow button so we can let you know about our future shows. As always, if you have any ideas for future topics you'd like to hear about, any feedback, something you'd like us to do or not do, or whatever, send it to media@cafhq.org, media@cafhq.org. Thanks again, Rick, for joining us. We'll look forward to seeing you in person in a couple of weeks on the flight line at Whitman Regional Airport in Oshkosh. Until next time, from the Commemorative Air Force, I'm Steve Buss. Have a good night.